All right, thank you. If there's no other announcements, I'm going to introduce our programming vice presidents. That's Alice Turner and again, Kathy Jensen, to introduce our speakers for the day. Alice?
Okay, thank you, David. As I think most of us know, Caleb Hall, David Tyson Smith, and Scott Cristal are the three candidates that will be on our forum today. We will have a short opening statement and then questions from the floor. And Leslie Clay will be moderating this. She's very experienced at it. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here today.
Okay. I've done this before, but never on Zoom. What we're going to do is we're going to have each candidate give a 2-minute, or I guess 2-minute spiel on themselves. Tell us whatever you want to tell us, keeping in mind a lot of us don't know you. And you have 2 minutes. I have a clock with a second hand. And at the end of, when it's 30 seconds past, 30 seconds until your time, I flash up this. Does that look like 30 or is that backwards?
That's right.
Okay. And then 10 seconds. And then I tell you to stop. And when I'll start out alphabetically, you give an opening statement, 2 minutes. And after that, we'll take questions, and questions from the press are certainly welcome. Keep your questions to 30 seconds or less. I don't want to hear speeches from you. I want to hear speeches from the three people. And then we'll go through that, start out here, I think alphabetically, Scott Cristal is first. And then we'll start answering questions. We'll rotate. The next one alphabetically is Mr. Hall, and he'll answer the question first, and the other two have, see, I guess it would be 2 minutes to answer. Again, I'll hold up the signs. The second question, we'll start with Mr. Smith, and we'll keep rotating so that everybody has a chance. I don't want any questions that are only to one person. All three get to answer the question. And then after questions are done, maybe they won't be done, but at some point near the end, we've got to finish this up, and we will give a wrap up, and each one can give a 2-minute wrap up. And again, this time we'll start with, say, Mr. Hall, because he is second, and work our way to around. But we're trying to get everybody as equally situated as possible. So, with that said, now I said it was going to be, better write this down, a 2 minutes opening statement. Okay, then the first person to go is Mr. Cristal. Would you please speak?
Alrighty, well, we'll go ahead and start. And I want to thank Muleskinners and also all the people who are guests here for just in general. When I first came to Columbia, I knew nobody. And I'm not comfortable not knowing a whole lot of people. So the way I decided to go around and meet people was to get involved. Through the years, I've been appointed or elected to different boards and commissions, and many of these I've had leadership positions on. One of the ones that stood out was the Convention Visitors Board. I was the first non-hotelier to be elected as chair. I've taken part in the task force, and of course, anything that I'm involved with, I share with everybody in the community to spread the word. In terms of other community activities, I've been for a long time a part of Almeida Creighton's Everybody Eats, where they deliver Thanksgiving turkeys. I helped Almeida sign up people, I delivered turkeys, and I did publicity. When she unfortunately passed away in October before Thanksgiving, I was one of the ones that they asked to be on the emergency committee to see about if this project and her other projects could continue. Obviously, good work was done with that by all the people on the committee because it's still very active today. Another aspect of in the community is in September, I was asked to be the co-chair of the political committee of the NAACP. I joined them several years ago. I'm also a very big part of the entrepreneurial community and helping people in businesses. The idea is to be active and see what we can do, because it all ends up relating to how you can help people and be a part of the community. And also, of course, I tie in democratic politics. All right, we'll go ahead and stop there.
All right, the next person to speak would be Caleb Hall.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I do appreciate your time. My name, as has been said, my name is Caleb Hall. I'm a local attorney. I've been living in Columbia for 5 years, and I'm humbly asking for your consideration for the open 45th seat. At the end, I should disclose that anything that I say today or in response to any questions should reflect on me and not my employer, the Office of the Public Counsel, which is a state agency. The reason why I'm coming forward to seek the Boone County Democrat Party's nomination is that I think my record shows that I take my passions and translate them into action for the public. I'm concerned about how ever-rising utility rates will impact Missouri's working poor and elderly, and so I joined Missouri's Office of Public Counsel, where I've served for 3 years. Before then, I was actually, and the reason why I came to Columbia is that I started a job in the Missouri House as an analyst for both caucuses. For 3 sessions, including for 3 regular sessions and 1 uniquely tortuous special session, I staffed committees, wrote legislation, and advised representatives on their legislation. I've worked directly with elected officials, many of whom are still in that Capitol, and have a firsthand understanding of how that building works. That is knowledge I'll put to work immediately for Columbia. Now, I have a lot of interests and policy issues that I want to focus on, but I think for the 45th, any representative should be focusing on education, both K through 12 and higher education. Healthcare, we not only need to focus on Medicaid expansion that Missourians approved, but we need to make sure hospitals have resources to continue to address the ongoing COVID epidemic. And I want to seek truly progressive economic development policy that improves the lives of all people across the state. One example I have in mind is the Earned Income Tax Credit. Again, I thank you for your time.
And finally, we have Mr. Smith.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you to Muleskinners for having us here today to talk. It's an honor and it's been an exciting process. My name is David Tyson Smith. I grew up in Columbia. I went to the University of Missouri, Columbia. I have been serving the citizens of Missouri for almost 20 years here as a practicing attorney. And we do criminal defense work, personal injury, and family law. So I'm well versed in criminal justice issues. I've had a law firm here for about 15 years, Smith & Parnell, and we've been serving the citizens. I was one of the founders, or I helped establish the Citizens Police Review Board. And although that's something I'm proud of, I know the review board still has a lot of work to do. I was also appointed in 2017 to the Missouri Advisory Committee to the United States Commission on Civil Rights. And so I've served the citizens of Missouri in that capacity. The Commission on Civil Rights advises the President of the United States and Congress on civil rights issues. If elected, I would be the first African-American to the State House from Columbia. I would also be the first Black representative in outstate Missouri. There's never been a Black representative in Jefferson City outside of Kansas City or St. Louis. The significance of that is not so much for me or historical issues, but more for, I think, the youth of our area. I think everyone needs, it'd be good for the youth to see that. I think that's very important. I know what it's like to get pulled over as a Black driver, have your kids in the car, and for them to be frightened. And I can take that to the Capitol. There's the main issues we have, I think, are COVID. We need mask mandates statewide. We need to get vaccinations out. Schools, they're always under attack. I favor public schools as opposed to private schools getting the preference. Medicaid expansion, there's going to be a fight to have that underfunded, and we need to make sure that our workers are taken care of and the working poor. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
All right, I appreciate the comments. It looks like we have some good candidates. People who want to ask questions, you can either hold your hand up. Now, my screen, I can only see 25 people at a time. I have to keep shuttling between 2 screens, but you can hold your hand up or if nobody has been called on, you can call your name out and say who you are. And you have 30 seconds to ask a question. All right. Any hands up? Then to see David Robinson is the first one with a hand up.
Thank you very much. I agree about the candidates. I do not envy the people who have to make this choice. I'm glad I won't be doing it. I will be happy with their choice amongst these three candidates. You're all very different. And so I'd like to hear your ideas about how to deal with the problem of Democrats being in such a depressed minority in our state government, or how you might either through strategy or through style, you might help give us the representation and the visibility that we need.
All right. Mr. Hall, you answer that first.
Okay. That's a good question, David, because it's not just that the Democrats are in a super minority, it's that we are living through a time of politics where I would say a third of the electorate is unreachable. They refuse to admit that they lost a free and fair election, and it is hard to cross that divide. I don't think I have all the answers for that, but what I am going to offer is that from what I've seen, there are obvious partisan divides, but a lot of divides in the Capitol building are along personality lines. And if you can build relationships, if you can go to people across the aisle and show that you aren't some crazy loony liberal like the internet portrays you as, you're an actual person that's connected to the state and you care, you can find common goals and achieve that together. One example I have in mind is Senator Rader. She's from the boot heel. She and I disagree on nearly everything policy-wise, but she's the only Republican in that Capitol pushing for a prescription drug monitoring program. That's a huge public health issue that can benefit the whole state. I would love to work with her on getting that across the aisle. And then if we can get a mutual success on that front, I believe we can then use that to pay dividends to get her support for other legislation. And I don't mean to call Senator Rader out. That's just one example that just comes to mind.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you. I think it's important to look for people who will listen. You know, as an attorney, and I'm often on the opposite sides of prosecutors, and I have to deal with judges frequently. And so I always try to, if I can, get in front of people, especially judges who I know will listen and are fair. Judge Oxenhandler was a great judge in that respect because although he was tough, he would listen. And even with prosecutors, and not, you know, for example, you know, Jessica Caldera, she's a prosecutor that, you know, obviously she represents the state, but I know in cases with her that she's at least going to listen. So we're coming from opposite perspectives, but you want to root out those people who will listen. I practiced law in New Orleans for a short time. I went to Tulane Law School and worked there, then moved back. And I remember talking to a gentleman there, and in the outstate areas of New Orleans, it's Republican. New Orleans is a Democratic city. And I worked with this young man, and he was was at the time, he was actually older than me, but he was a trial attorney. I knew he was a Democrat at heart, but he told me, he said, David, if I have to run, I'm going to have to run as a Republican. And I knew that that's a type of person, if I was going to work with somebody, that's who I look out for. Somebody that is not on the extreme far right, is not going to budge an inch, but somebody that you can build common ground with. And as part of my background as an attorney, that's something that I've done for years, is the negotiation piece, working with people. And so you have to be aggressive without alienating. And that's the key.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cristal, let's see, where are you?
Okay.
Oh, there you
And it's obvious that we need to try and build relationships, but as we all know, this is a very politically charged atmosphere. Part of my approach, besides building, or in addition, as a way to build relationships, is to find areas where we can work together. One of the ideas that I'd like to convince the others that would be a good idea is creating a highway of opportunities where we can use the resources that we have here in Columbia, Kansas City, and St. Louis, all working together for the betterment of the state. I feel that this is something that a lot of Republicans would be willing to jump into and help take advantage of. And one of the things that I find with working with other people, you can get a lot done if you don't care who gets the credit. I think that is something that is going to be a good way to serve me in a super minority like we're going to be faced with down there. Being a salesperson and someone who knows how to negotiate because of being a salesperson and running my own business, there are different ways I can use different types of approaches to make people comfortable with talking with me without thinking I'm a radical lefty or just some other type of crazy because I have a D behind my name. I believe that people would be willing to talk with me, especially because I'm willing to listen. And I can listen in a way where I hear what they're saying, not just go through the motions of that. A lot of this is going to be for all three of us as we go through, whoever gets chosen, is to feel things out. The skills that I think I'm bringing would give me a good way to fight for the people of the 45th, as well as for our Democratic Party.
Okay, thank you. Another question from anyone? Let me see both pages. Any hands raised? Oh, I thought I saw a hand raised somewhere. Warren Sapp, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Let's see, am I on? Yeah.
You're on.
Hi.
Remember, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, a recall of Josh Hawley and Vicky Hartzler is in order for having committed sedition, but it appears there is no mechanism in the state of Missouri for a recall election for somebody in Congress or maybe even the governor. How would you suggest we might create accountability for our representatives?
I can't hear you, but I think we got the question. So we could start with Mr. Smith.
That's an excellent question. And I appreciate you asking that. That's something that that type of issue is something that I've been thinking about quite a bit this last week or two. When I heard that Senator Hawley was going to object in the last week or so to the votes being certified, that was sickening, and it was deplorable. Not only was it sickening, but the fact that he's represents Missouri and what people think about Missouri, and that he's using Missouri as a stepping stone to the White House by doing something so utterly vile. Senator Hawley knows better. He's not some low rep from Alabama that's, not to shame a representative from Alabama, but he's an educated person. He knows that he knows that was wrong, what he did. Just by objecting, he knows that's wrong. He's a very smart man and he knows better. And that was one of the most vile things he could have done. I think, because we don't have that mechanism, I say continue to put the pressure on him. I like what I've seen about the petitions about continuing to ask him to resign. Don't allow him to go to speaking engagements. Put pressure on people who would help him try to get to the White House. I know that Simon & Schuster canceled his book deal, which I was glad to hear. I mean, he's basically using the citizens here just for his own personal agenda. So I would say increase the pressure. Call his office, call other senators, tell them you don't want them working with him. He needs to be alienated and a message needs to be sent, because what he did was horrific. I mean, this was not just him expressing his opinion. We all saw the photo of him with his fist pumping in the air right before the election, or right before the vote.
All right, and Mr. Cristal.
I think we all agree with what David had to say, but Senator Hawley isn't the only one to be called out. Although I don't know if you all had noticed, the Lincoln Project has been running ads here in Missouri disapproving of Senator Hawley. with the idea of doing some of the suggestions that David talked about in terms of trying to limit his support. But he's not the only one that needs to be called out. We have our Congress people, several who were planning to vote and did vote not to certify, only because it's a political statement. We have local legislatures here who also wanted to vote to show as a sign of solidarity with these other people who don't believe our elections are free. It's all political statement, political theater. What we need to do is shine a spotlight on all these people, let people know, and put these people on the defensive, and let people know what their actions are doing and how they are actually being seditionists. That's something that can be done not just by our elected officials, meaning unfortunately just Democrats and maybe some Republicans, but all of you out there who are listening to this and everyone else in the community who should be as upset about what's going on as we are.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I could always depend on the Tillamoos. All right.
Well,
Remember,
Leslie, could I answer that question?
Caleb.
We only have
needs to
two
answer.
Yeah, I'll say it really quick so we
Oh,
can
I
just
missed
move on to the
Mr.
next
Hall. I'm
question.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, that's quite all right. I'll just really quick. There's really two ways I would frame the response that you need for Hawley. One is the immediate and two is the upshot. The immediate concern is, think about 2022. Blunt understands that there's a danger. There's a reason why after enabling and coddling Trump's behavior for 4 years, Blunt differed from Hawley and didn't object and wanted to distance himself from Hawley's politics. Blunt, even in a red state like Missouri, sees himself as vulnerable. Let's confirm his fears. Let's push a strong candidate, get out of support early. It was only 2 years ago that we had a Democrat senator from Missouri, and we can do it again. The upshot to Hawley's issue is he is objectively a bad politician. And I don't mean just a person with unscrupulous morals and who has just exploited every resource he has to get to further his ambition. What I mean is that he doesn't make friends along the way. He used Mizzou law for 1 year, then left for the AG, left that in shambles for less than a year to go to the Senate. And now that he's in the US Senate, he's not making friends. He's alienating himself. There's a great news piece article that shows that when the Capitol was in lockdown, he was alone by himself in a corner while everyone else was actually together in hiding from a riot. I don't necessarily want Hawley recalled. I want him to continue to stick out as a black thumb and to show the disgustingness of his behavior so that way that he is much weaker and more vulnerable to losing election in 2024.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hall. I'm sorry, it's hard to keep track on Zoom. All right, now, Mr. Tillema, and remember, you have 30 seconds.
I too am very impressed with the quality of this field of candidates. I thank each and every one of you for stepping forward. I wish we could send all three of you to Jefferson City. It would improve the quality of the House overall, and it would do something about our minority status. But my question is about where you're going to hope to concentrate your efforts. What committees have you identified in your mind as among, you don't have to be complete, but one of the ones you're thinking about as places you would like to serve committees within the House?
Okay, we're going to start with Mr. Cristal this time.
I'm pretty much open in terms of the type of committees that I want to serve on. With my business background and all, I think I could be put in some good success with being on the budget committee. Or the other ones would be ones that are relating to business. Again, ways to do that. I think those would be the ones that would be my strengths. I don't know what ones are going to be actually offered as opportunities, and I don't know how much of a choice realistically I'm going to have when I become down in Jeff City to see what I want to do. So for the ideas and the things that I want to push for, I think going with the budget one would probably be the best. Kip's been on that, and it would be great to continue that type of representation for the 45th district and also, of course, for Columbia. So I realize this is not a perfect answer in terms of that, but I want to see more of the makeup in terms of what's going on with those when I get there. So I figure it's kind of cross that bridge as I get there, as opposed to aiming for something and then realizing, no, I need to shift direction.
All right, now, Mr. Hall, I won't overlook you this time.
Thank you. I staffed economic development and I had a minor role in 2018 to help with the budget committee. So I'm interested in those committees, and I would very much like to get back into that role. One committee that may surprise you, because most of the 45th constituents are not customers of a publicly owned utility. Most of them are customers of Columbia Water and Light, except for gas service, where usually they're being served by Ameren Gas. I'm currently in the utility regulatory field, and I'm very interested in seeking membership of the Utilities Committee, because I do see a lack of a knowledge base in the minority caucus in understanding those issues. And I don't mean to disparage anyone, but 2 years ago, the General Assembly passed a major bill that is going to increase customer bills across the state. And it was an incredibly complicated bill that even if people knew it was bad, couldn't explain why. And just this session, we're going to see more pushes to raise bills again, even after they just got plant and service accounting 2 years ago, and now the utilities are going to be pushing for a new toy called securitization. They want to be paid more for something they're already doing.
Okay.
And I think I'll now defer the rest of my time for David to answer that question.
Okay, well then, Mr. Smith, your answer.
Thank you, Caleb. I'm open to the various committees at this point. I mean, I haven't thought about specifically what committee I would be involved with. I agree with Scott, is that I want to go down there and see what the landscape is before making a decision. And you don't know what opportunities are available. With that being said, I'm an attorney. So I would want to do something potentially with the Judiciary Committee, because I think there's a lot of issues going on. I know that with some of the riots that we had with George Floyd, I think people are listening to issues and there's some leverage to be used now. I think that now's the time, if we're going to get something done, we can work on getting things done. Everything just kind of fades away. There is a bill that's been pre-filed, I believe it's by Senator Williams, regarding banning chokeholds, no-knock warrants, and things of that nature. So that's something I'd be supportive of. So a committee like that, where I could exercise my legal background, I think would be helpful. And also, not only that, unfortunately, a lot of the statutes that are written are poorly written. And I know that's not necessarily to blame for the legislators, obviously that staff sometimes, but I want to make sure I could be a stopgap for that, because as a practicing attorney in court, when you read some of these statutes, they're very difficult to interpret, and it allows, you don't want to give a gray area to the state to fill in the gaps, right? When you're in court and it's close, it allows too much latitude for the state, especially in criminal cases. So that's something I want to keep my eye on there. One thought I've had, and I don't know if I would do this, and it kind of leads into the other question was asked earlier about building relationships, children and families. And that's because the Speaker of the House is, he's big on adoption issues right now. Not to say that I agree with all his tax ideas for adoptive families, but be a way to build relationships with the Speaker is to be on that committee. And those are progressive issues that could help Democrats as well.
Okay. All right, another question. Hold on, I want to look at both pages before I. Okay, I think Carl Scala has his hand up somewhere.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I've been in contact with all of the candidates seeking endorsements. and that's a mixed bag. But nonetheless, one of the issues that is important to me, and I suspect will be important to the 45th candidate, will be preemption, and how the federal, state, and state government affect the urban-rural divide, and how preemption affects the city of Columbia and the 45th districts. Any comments on preemption from the candidates?
Okay, I think the next person that goes first is Mr. Smith, is it not?
Yeah. Is it? Thank you. Yeah, good question, Carl. And I remember we talked about this, you and I talked about this in person. You know, generally, Republicans are the ones that fight for local control. But I think in this scenario, I don't think it's always good for the governor's office at the state level to come down and affect local policy when we have good people at the city council, things we want to get accomplished. So I do have an issue, I think, when we're trying to do things at a local level, and we've got a state, especially a red state, with a Republican governor that can come in and usurp our authority and usurp the will of the people. I think we have a very active political base here in Columbia, and I think people are very involved here, more so I think than in other counties around the state. And so at the state level, for the governor or state officials to be able to dictate or undermine what's happening in Columbia, considering we're one of the blue areas in the whole state, I think is inappropriate. So normally, you're almost switching philosophies when you talk about local control. But I think because of our unique situation, I'm not a big fan of the state coming down and telling us.
Minority Democrats.
Okay, you're done. Okay, then the next one would be Mr. Cristal.
All right. I'm not a fan of this at all either. And we have seen different things that the state has done despite being in favor supposedly of local control. We've seen St. Louis and Kansas City want to raise the minimum wage, and the folks in Jeff City overruled that. We've seen issues with things as simple as paper bags, again, overruled. In terms of CAFOs and other areas along those lines, again, overruled. It seems to be something more just of convenience. Being a super minority, it's really going to be tough to fight that. Referendums, unless they're amendments, they get overturned in the state legislature. We've seen this over and over again, the thwarting of the will of the people. The way to try and get, unfortunately, what we have to do is rely on the people, not just in the 45th, but all over, uniting to make their will known. It can be done just through talking with the different legislators, or more importantly, raising a fuss, and legislators not wanting to offend people may decide they need to back off a little bit. It's a tough issue right there for us to try and get what we want to do and stop this selective preemption that has been going on. But it's going to really basically not just take a state rep to do it. It's going to take everyone working together. The state rep, though, can let people know what's going on and shine a light. In Obama's biography, or the book that he came out with, rather, he talked about being a state senator. And one of the things that he noticed, which was the worst of everything, was that, and it happens here in Missouri, as we know, lobbyists and special interests write the bills. And people don't know what's going on with these particular bills that are detrimental. If we can shine a light on that, more people can get involved, and maybe we can stop.
Okay, Mr. Hall.
Hi, I think some people may have joined so the question was how we would approach local control, either supporting or our thoughts on it. I mean, that is a difficult question only because the open secret of local control is that it's usually a proposition made by people in the minority party. In blue states, Republicans are the big trumpeters of local control, and then the inverse happens in red states. I think the real way to push local control when it is needed, and especially to secure Columbia's interests as compared to the outer state region, is to try to avoid this appearance of hypocrisy. Justice Brandeis referred to the states as laboratories of democracy. in that because the states are unified but separate, one state can pursue one policy, and if that's successful, that state should do better economically and encourage more people to move there. Thus, the laboratories moniker that the justice gave to it. That's the beauty of local control inside a state. We can see if you have strong local control protections and you let municipalities and counties go through their own policy agendas, you can see what works and what doesn't. This is why I primarily object to the overriding of the minimum wage increase in St. Louis. I'm not so sure a $15 minimum wage is actually the best wage statewide, but when someone's contending that 15 minimum wage will absolutely doesn't work, but won't let one municipality try that experiment to see if it works, that tells me that they're scared that it might actually work. I think that I've said enough. We can move on to the next question.
Okay, let's see. Mr. Smith, have you answered that question yet?
Yeah, I went
Okay,
first.
I'm sorry. All right, then, any other questions from people? Alice, unmute yourself.
I guess this is maybe related to preemption, but one of my concerns in the current legislative session are bills to decrease the power of the local health department, local municipalities to try to deal, specifically to try to deal with COVID. You know, in a state where we have a governor that refuses a mask ordinance. Perhaps the Biden administration actions may override some of that, at least in the first 100 days, but I wondered if you could comment on those efforts.
Okay, was it Mr. Smith was the first one last time, so Mr. Cristal would be the one to start now.
All righty, I will start. Alice, you let me know if I'm not answering your question because I'm not quite sure what you're asking. In a sense, you're in favor of presumption of the president telling us to go ahead and wear masks. I see nothing wrong with that, of course, because I think that's important for it just makes sense. It's a tool. It keeps people well and protected. In terms of the legislator in Jeff City talking to people or issuing edicts for Columbia, St. Louis, or wherever in the state, again, I am not in favor of that. It really does fall into preemption in that particular aspect. And I think the comments that we've all have made, being that we're not in favor of that, again, unfortunately, with being the minority party, there's not much we can do. All we can do, again, is raise our voices and tell people we don't want this. We want something else. We want to have our own control. And I don't really have much more to add to it than what I had said before.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hall?
I think to the delight of everyone in attendance today, I think all the candidates are coming from a similar standpoint on this issue. We all understand the value of masks. We all understand that the state needs leadership to address COVID, and thankfully, we're going to have some national leadership to alleviate this issue. At the state level, we need to continue to empower Boone County and Columbia to respond to COVID as we are now. Our hospital beds are filled up because people from the rest of the state are getting sick and coming in. And now people that are being sent to Columbia are being sent St. Louis or KC and eventually outer state. I'm hearing that people in Springfield that are sick are now being sent to Arkansas and Oklahoma. I'm sorry, is it Alice or Elise?
It's Alice.
Alice, yeah, I think when it comes to COVID, we all understand that this is a life or death issue. And so strong local control protections are especially needed. I don't know how else to properly explain my position other than, yes, we need to, if Centralia doesn't want to have a mask mandate, fine, but there is no reason why the state should come in and tell Columbia that they can't have their own.
Okay, and Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I agree with the other candidates. You know, COVID's a crisis, and hopefully, I think it's ridiculous when, we all know we walk around Columbia and you go in businesses and people have masks, but then you go to Jefferson City and you go to a restaurant or you go there and it's like they have no idea about COVID. I've been in places there and people are coming up to me and just touching me and shaking my hand. And it's like, have you guys turned on the news? And that's in the state's capital. It's totally ridiculous. And as Caleb mentioned, with the beds filling up and especially with this new strain coming over, we can't have local control stripped from us for our people who are actually doing the right thing. I mean, we're one of the few areas that are actually trying to mask up and protect ourselves. You know, I know Biden talked about, you know, his first 100 days of everyone should wear masks, and hopefully that will trickle down, and that at the state level, people will value that and see that. Because I do think because of the Trump administration, we all know that he says things that aren't true, and I think people believe it. And so I think there's a huge group of people, we all know this, I'm talking to the choir here, but that really still don't believe in the value of masks. And I think to have a president of the United States, I think there are, you know, the extremists are never going to believe, but I think there are going to be people that are going to be influenced. And I think that will trickle down to the state legislatures, and hopefully the climate will change a little bit, and people will allow us to continue to have masks.
Okay. I'm looking to see if anybody has put anything on the chat that has asked a question.
Al Plummer's waving his hand, Leslie.
Oh, oh, Al Plummer. All right, now this is going to have to be the last one, so that they can give their 2-minute spiel at the end. But Al, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. I commend all of you for deciding to take on this challenge. It's by no means a small type of sacrifice that all of you are making. Question I have is, what are your legislative priorities?
Okay, and see here, the last time, who went first last time? I can't even remember.
Scott did. I think it was Scott and
All
Caleb.
right, well, Mr. Hall, what are your legislative priorities?
Al, thank you for that question. I have positioned I guess we don't really have a formal primary, but I've stationed my quote unquote campaign on like 3 main pillars: healthcare, education, and economic development. For education, I'm primarily concerned with preventing the further undermining of public education, fully funding K-12, and fully supporting the University of Missouri. Just last year, the University of Missouri Law School put up a job posting. They needed someone to come and teach tax law. And the actual job posting said, due to budget constraints, this position will not be compensated. That's the actual phrasing of the position. We can't have that. We can't be a respectable university that creates the leaders of tomorrow when we can't even pay our professors. Healthcare, we've talked about COVID. We've talked about a lot about COVID during this forum. I'm also very interested in Medicaid expansion. We've lost 10 rural hospitals since 2014 across this state. We need people in the legislature to do the boring good of appropriations work to ensure that what the people voted for in the last election cycle is actually implemented. We're getting more money directly into hospitals and the communities that host those hospitals, while not diverting funds from other crucial state resources. And for economic development, I'm interested in pursuing measures that, instead of trying to give money to large employers and try to attract them, I don't want to chase smokestacks. I want to build our economy from the bottom up. An earned income tax credit, for example, is one of the key ways to address poverty. We see this at the federal level. It's, you get rid of the bureaucracy of other entitlement programs. It's a check directly into the hands of working poor. Missouri is one of, if not the only state in the US that doesn't have a state level earned income tax credit. I think that's something we can pass, and something that can produce real tangible good to Missouri's working families. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent question. You know, I don't have an agenda going down to Jefferson City right now. I want to go down, I want to learn, and I want to fill in the gaps and decide what to do once I get there. However, with that being said, and again, I don't, like I said, although I don't have an agenda, this is what I believe is important. And I think this is what, as I mentioned before, what's going to come up and we need to fight for. Right now, I think COVID is the huge issue on the table, because we can't deal with a lot of these other issues, and they're interrelated. until we address the COVID issues. I mean, people are dying, they're still getting sick. And I think we all sense that it's getting closer and closer in the sense that although there's vaccinations coming, you remember when it first started, it was, well, you heard about somebody maybe on television, and then it was a distant relative or a distant friend, and now it's your neighbor, now it's you. Now it's, you know, your sibling, your spouse. I mean, as we sit here today, my law partner decided not to come in because a child that she went out with to dinner, her father woke up with COVID. And so for the safety of the office, she's not here. So we need to deal with that. And so that's a priority, is to deal with COVID and get these vaccinations out. Some people even mention, and these issues are all interlinked to some degree, Alvin, because we've got a situation where now we're going back to school here in Columbia with the kids. You know, my kids are starting next week, my son is, and should teachers be bumped up on the vaccination list from B1 to A1? So COVID is a main issue. We need to deal with that. And again, at schools, like I said, I went to Mizzou, as Caleb mentioned, you know, they're having difficult funding teacher positions. You know, I'll continue to be a champion for Mizzou because public education is important. I came up through public education, and really that's the only opportunity a lot of people have is public education. Like I said, Medicaid expansion, they're going to fight it up there. And so we need to stop them from doing that and taking away. I mean, that's an attack on the working poor. So we need to keep fighting for the people in that regard.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cristal.
I think pretty much everyone agrees COVID is the issue. Joe Biden pointed that out in terms of when he was running for president, that needs to be taken care of first. It's obviously here in Missouri that we do. In terms of economic development, which I consider very, very important, it can be tied into all different types of things. One of the things the state is going to scream about is we just don't have the money because of COVID. So once we deal with COVID, I personally think things are going to start picking up and going well. There's a lot of pent up demand. People are going to want to do things, so they'll be willing to spend money, shop. As a result, there'll be more tax revenue that'll be coming in. In terms of education, I also went through the public school system, although in St. Louis, I chose to move to Columbia. The thing with the higher institutions, and when the legislature passes their bills, they keep lowering the requirements so they can always say that education is fully funded. It's just terrible what they're doing. We need to find ways to get more money to our higher institutions and also to IK through 12. Education, as David pointed out, is the way for people to get out of poverty, make themselves more knowledgeable about the world, and give them the skills they need so they can participate and be successful. I think those are things that need to be emphasized. And I think in terms of presenting that discussion, I don't want to say argument, to some of the legislatures that and what advantages that would be for now and in the future, maybe some of them can be persuaded to take a look at things from a different perspective. We don't know until we try.
Okay, thank you very much. And now, pardon me, the clock in my hallway is fairly loud. We want to have a wind up, a summary or whatever it is you want to say to us in closing. And so we'll start with Mr. Hall. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Leslie. I guess in summation, I want to thank the Boone County Muleskinners again for providing this forum and letting us all talk. Without the forums like this and what we've seen from Race Matters Friends and the Boone County Central Committee last night, this process to decide who the next rep, possibly for the next 8 years for the 45th, would be, is largely, admittedly, undemocratic. A select committee of 10 people are going to ultimately make that choice. What I want to say in closing is, I mean, I have my own idea of who I think the best candidate is, but I want you to have a voice in that choice. I am strongly encouraging you to reach out to members of the committee, voice your concerns, state your opinion, have conversations, even if that hurts me, even if that hurts my chances. We all want the best candidate for the 45th. I am offering a unique cross-section of experiences from the executive and the legislative branch, for why I think I'd be an effective representative for the 45th. I have prior volunteer experience. I'm a sitting member of Columbia's Tax Increment Financing Commission, and I'm the city's representative on the St. Charles Transportation Development District Board. I'm concerned, I care about this city and this community, and I'll translate that same care into the State House. And thank you again.
Well, thank you. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank, again, Muleskinners for having us here today. This is fantastic. And I'm so glad with technology that we can still do this with COVID issues and even the weather. I mean, I was sliding around a little bit getting here today out of my driveway. So it's great that we can be here together. So I'm so thankful. And I just want to say, I've been humbled by the process and honored, talking to so many people. And as I've reached out to people, so many people have shared their ideas with me, and I'm better for it. I've learned. And I think we have a great community here, a great group of Democrats, and it's been a fantastic process. And so I'm thankful for this. And so again, just as far as just in summation, we're in a state of crisis right now. I mean, I have never seen anything like this, even in the history books, federally, at the federal level, at the state level. This is something our grandkids and great grandkids are going to be talking about, what's happening here. So it's important that we're vigilant to do the right thing. There really is no tomorrow for all of us. I mean, this is it. Missouri is almost sliding down a precipice. And so it's going to take real leadership. What distinguishes me is my background. I grew up here, grew up in Columbia. I went to Mizzou. I think my first real job, I was given the opportunity by Columbia legend Elliot Battle when I was in high school. And so I'm really a product of this community. I feel like I'm a product of the Minorities Network. I'm a product of the schools here. I am a voice from Columbia. And again, going to Mizzou as well. And again, I would be the first Black representative in the House. I think that's historic, but again, not for me, but I think for the youth in our city and mid-Missouri. And again, the issues, COVID, we need to get on top of that. We need to make sure that Medicaid expansion is properly funded and that public schools are properly funded. So I want to thank you for your time, and it's been an honor.
Okay, and Mr. Cristal.
Of course, I want to thank Muleskinners again for setting this up in this presentation. I'd also like to thank Caleb and David both for going through this process. We've had a lot of shared experience in this short period of time as we're going through this. I too have found it humbling from the people I have talked to, flattering in some ways as well, for the ideas people have shared with me and the feelings that they have when they have decided that I'm the one that they want to endorse. In terms of what I hold for the future, Missouri, this is the time to act. We have seen most of our lives, all of us, no matter what our age, all kinds of problems kicked down the road. Well, the road has ended. We are in a very strange, difficult period. Some of the comments that I read earlier this morning by some of our congressmen in Washington sound just like something you would have seen before the Civil War. It's just mind-blowing. I feel, though, overall, I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to do and accomplish some good things, especially once we get COVID put behind us. I think there's going to be ways we can find to work together, not just all the Democrats, because most of us are pretty united. Sure, there's divisions in our party, but that's more of an aspect of ways we want to accomplish something and who we want to accomplish it. I believe we can reach out, and basically one of the things I've done in my whole life is let people know what the issues are and listen to what they have to say. I feel it's really important to get people involved because I think that is going to be, in these times, the best way to make changes. And I feel I can help lead people so we can make things better for Missouri, for Columbia, for the 45th. So hopefully I'll have a chance to fight for the 45th. We'll see what ends up happening. And again, the two candidates who are also running for this position, I have lots of great things to say about them. David, I've known for years. Caleb, I've gotten to know in some phone conversations and just what other people have said about them. And with that, I've got to stop.
Yes. Well, I thank all three of you for coming and speaking to us today. You are going to make it a very difficult decision for everyone that has to make that decision because you're all so good. I don't know, if, David, are we going to continue to have a meeting after this?
I think since we're already past time, we should go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay, well then, I don't know if you want to invite them to stay longer, but the meeting is probably going to be wrapped up. So that's up to you.
That didn't occur to me, but yes, I guess as long as we have the Zoom, if anyone wants to stick around, if our candidates are available, want to stick around for follow-up questions, but we'll officially close the meeting now at this point. I want to thank everyone for attendance. Leslie, appreciate you moderating this Zoom forum. It's certainly different, this whole
Just
Zoom
looking at
world.
a clock the whole time.
Good job.
Ringing bells.
Again, to all three of you, Caleb, David, and Scott, thank you all for being here. Let's like everyone appreciate, let's give them a big hand for being here with us. Thank you so much. We will officially end the meeting now, but again, if our candidates can stick around and anyone wants to stick around and just visit, you're welcome to. So thank you very much.
I see Pam has